don't know. Like them or not, I think it's a far better way of increasing wealth and prosperity for people than just taking away money from like the rich and just giving it to everyone else. Like that doesn't. First of all, that is not a. Though we do have an amazing amount of like increase or income and wealth disparities in this country today, that is not a system-wide fundamental change that is going to be continuous. You know, that's like kind of like a band-aid solution for a given period of time. You know, that doesn't create a what's the saying? You can give a man a fish and feed him for a day, or you can teach him how to fish and feed him for life. It's some shit like that. Is that a Bible? Is that from the Bible? I don't know. But that really is like what we're looking at here. It's like Bernie's whole idea of like let's just tax the rich. You know, that's not a fundamental system-wide change that's going to create a continued system of prosperity and economic planning that benefits the people who make up this country, the masses. That's basically just like a band-aid type interim solution, I guess you could say, that might alleviate some people's issues for a little bit. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really change who runs this country. It doesn't really change the power dynamic of those who control this government. It doesn't really guarantee that the wealth, that the richest of the rich are going to have so much power and that they are going to stop controlling every aspect of our lives. No. What China is doing, and what other socialist projects around the world are trying to do, but are having, I believe, great issues with as a result of U.S. hybrid warfare, is trying to create a different system that results in the masses sharing, and not only the wealth and the prosperity of their economies, their industries, but also having more of an even hand in the power makeup of their government, having a government that serves their ends rather than the ends of the top 1%.
Second largest economy in the world, and lifted 700 million people out of poverty. They now produce more steel than any other country in the world. After the Civil War was over, Angola has had just a huge and unprecedented amount of growth. They're still a very poor country, but at one point their GDP rate of growth was 11% in a year. That's unheard of. Well, they did it with a planned economy, but it was a planned economy that allowed for foreign investment and allowed for small companies to exist as part of this centrally planned economy and in coordination with state-run industries and state-controlled natural resources. This is the kind of socialism that works. And we need to kind of get beyond this idea that socialism is poverty, or socialism is just some kind of egalitarian society where everyone's poor, but it's fair. This is not what socialism is, and that's not a vision that people in the USA are ever going to get behind.
Thank you, Barry.
China's official poverty line is $2.30 per day.
I'd like a source on that. But also, I might add that China does provide a lot more for their people. They do have different examples of the government, redistributing the wealth, nationalizing certain industries that we do not have here in the United States. For example, like with there was a lot of debate with actually the person that's Caleb just mentioned, Huey Long. There was a lot of debate. There were socialists and communists were not very happy with Huey Long. I mean, they obviously saw Huey Long as a far better alternative to FDR at the time, right? But they still had a lot of criticisms with Huey Long at that point in time. But Huey Long understood that just taxing the rich or just doing this or that is, it's not going to be a solution to the issue. Just doing a New Deal is not going to be a solution to the issue. That's why what Huey Long wanted to do was create these different programs, through the Share Our Wealth Act, which would have done a handful of different things, such as, guaranteeing household grants. He tried to do this in Louisiana too with the Louisiana Homestead Act. $5,000 household grants for all people. He wanted to do an annual minimum income of $3,000 for everybody, which would be $63,000 in today's standards. Free education, vocational training for students, farmer assistance, veterans benefits, public works, $30 per month pensions for seniors, which equates to $650 per day in today's standards. Months-long vacation for workers and free medical care. See, in the United States, our economy is not really, you can't really compare the two economies and expect there to be, complete unison in how we look at, what the cost of living is, because our government gives us nothing. Like, our government gives us nothing, and then the alternatives that we do have to buy, take healthcare, for example. We not only have to buy our healthcare, but we have to pay the highest amount for healthcare of any country in the world, per capita, of any country in the world, and we get some of the least amount of actual care in return. So, what's the saying? You're comparing apples to oranges. Now, extreme poverty is a specific designation that China has created. But you also have to understand, and if you listen to actual Chinese workers specifically, I mean, I've read testimonies from Uyghur workers who are working in Xinjiang who've explained that, by gaining just like a few bucks a day, they can actually live a sustainable life. Like, they can actually, keep a roof over their head. They can, pay for food. They can get their kids what they need to live a happy life. And so it's far different than what we have here in the United States. And you also have to understand just how poor these people were prior to having that $2.32 per day, as you put it, having a job. Let's watch this.
Hello everyone, I'm Rania Kalik, and this is Dispatches. In February of this year, the Chinese government celebrated the eradication of extreme poverty within its borders. Now, this would be a massive achievement for any country, but for China, even more so, as it's home to some 1.4 billion people and is considered a developing country. China's credited with lifting over 800 million people out of poverty, which accounts for 70% of the world's total poverty reduction. This is a massive feat, and it's worth understanding how China did it. To do just that, I'm joined by Ting Chak, a researcher at the Tricontinental Institute, a member of the Dengsheng News Collective, and she's the lead author of a report titled Serve the People, the Eradication of Extreme Poverty in China, which everyone can go check out at the Tricontinental website. Tings, welcome.
Thank you, Rania. So glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you on to talk about this. It's such a huge story, but just a quick reminder for those who are watching that you can also listen to every episode of Rania Kalik Dispatches anywhere you get podcasts. And for those who are listening, you can watch every episode on the Breakthrough News YouTube page. Be sure to subscribe. Now for the topic at hand. I'm so excited to have you on to talk about this report in particular because it's so comprehensive. As you know, of course, it not only includes facts and figures, but you guys provided this deep analysis of the poverty alleviation program in China, how it worked, why it worked, and you incorporated on-the-ground field.
I totally thought I read this earlier. I guess I didn't. Julia, thank you for the Venmo. You said just watch 10 minutes of Fox News on Ukraine, and I can't stand how much they fearmonger and act like Putin operates in a vacuum as a dictator. They never mentioned Nord Stream 2 or the Minsk ceasefire being broken by both sides, the Kiev side broke it using Turkish drum. And also, I mean, Tucker Carlson's probably doing the best commentary and analysis of Ukraine and Russia out of anyone on the mainstream news right now. So I imagine you're probably watching like Water's World or Hannity or something like that. But Tucker actually does pretty good commentary on that. Thank you for that, Benoit. I appreciate it. Very generous.
With research and interviews with experts, which is just so incredibly fascinating. And I really do encourage those who are watching and listening to go actually read the report. But for those who are watching and listening, I don't think people in the West really grasp just how huge it is that China managed to eradicate extreme poverty. So just to start off, can you give our listeners and viewers a brief overview of what...
Pause. Holy shit. I don't understand how you could cope this hard. I don't understand how you could cope this hard. Look at how people are trying to defend the squad. So I said the squad single-handedly passed a $12 billion boost in seed farming USAID funding. I explained why this is bad. And what did the squad defenders say? Kids, don't get your news from podcasters. This very bad vote happened half a year ago. It happened a few months ago. I acknowledge that. Programs that the squad is perpetuating by giving them this $12 billion boost. How much are you going to fucking vote over this? Is it wrong? Am I incorrect? God, people are so fucking dumb. And look at this one too. This one's even worse. Leftists is upset that other leftists hold different views. No. I am upset that I ever believed the charlatans were leftists in the first place. That's the truth. How much are you gonna fucking suck the teeth of the squad as they continue to fuck you? I'll never understand this.
This actually means in practical terms. Like, how do you define poverty, extreme poverty, and what does it mean to be lifted out of it? And then we can go from there.
Thanks, Rania. I think that's a great way to get us started. Maybe I can start with the story, because I quite like stories, and ultimately this is about,
That dipshit is in Queens DSA. Look at this. Why does he keep retweeting me? Why are you so fucking obsessed with me? If I'm just some dumb podcaster, why are you so obsessed with me? Running low on content? So you acknowledge this is a very bad vote that no one has covered and no one talked about, especially in progressive circles. And this is one of the biggest stories I think I've ever covered, and no one's talking about it. No one even knew this was happening. This is huge.
People's stories of, real people who get lifted out of poverty. And I got to meet one person in the process of doing this study. Her name is He Ying, and she's herself a poor peasant from the countryside in the southwestern province of Guizhou, which is historically quite a poor, very ethnically diverse region of the country. So we walked around with her for a day. She's now a leader of, which is 5-minute walk away. She lives in a community where she is also one of the leaders of, one of the 12 leaders of, 18,000 people. In that community, there are 3 medical centers, there's child care centers, there's a primary school, middle school, and also right next door is where her mother-in-law lives, as well as her brothers and sisters and nephews and nieces. So just to get a sense, her life now looks like this. But just a few years ago, that walk just to drop her kid off to school might have taken her about 2 hours each way, just walking. A community health clinic or the nearest hospital might be, a day's ride away on buses, bus walking. And now she lives in a community where those things are accessible to her. So in practical terms, with someone for her life, it is actually accessing those material things and being able to live in a community that with her kids and her mother-in-law can thrive. She says, I live upstairs, I work downstairs, and there's kind of 3 generations together. So that's the kind of story quite typical of what you might hear. Someone's experience that in the process of lifting themselves out of poverty become also leaders and protagonists in the process. And stepping back a bit in terms of how someone like her is defined to have lived in poverty and get lifted to act. The program has a slogan because here public policy often likes to use slogans with, kind of catchy phrases. So it's 1 income, 2 assurances, and 3 guarantees. What that is the first is income. Obviously, that's still the primary measure of how a person is doing, their income sources. Do they have work? So in China, the extreme poverty level is set at the equivalent of $2.30 a day. And this is, just so that you know, the World Bank uses $1.90 per day. So the China standard is actually a bit higher than that. But the Chinese,
What was that?
and this is, just so that you know, the World Bank uses $1.90 per day. So the China standard is actually a bit higher than that.
The World Bank qualifies extreme poverty as $1.90. So for all the countries that the U.S. is basically cut into doing business with the World Bank, I'm assuming with the IMF as well, they say that they label $1.90 per day. And someone in my chat was sent me something that said, well, it's not that hard to lift people out of extreme poverty. That line is at $2.30 US per day. So what you're saying is that the World Bank actually has a less strict line. This is probably what the United States utilizes to dictate, how much they're helping people. They're puppet states across the globe. They actually have a much lower, not just a little bit, but a much lower extreme poverty line, daily extreme poverty line than China does.
But the Chinese approach wasn't just.
I wonder if the World Bank takes that into account. I wonder if the World Bank takes food and clothing into account, free food and clothing for all the countries that they live in. I know I mentioned that China is not a comparable example because they have other programs that they have created to aid the citizenry of their country that we do not have here. And in fact, we are probably the most funded country when it comes to basic governmental programs. But yes, this is a perfect example. The 2 assurances are that you will not have to worry about food or clothing. We have to worry about food and clothing, and we pay some of the most work for this.
And then the 3 guarantees, which is that you are provided basic medical services, free and compulsory education, which in China is 9 years, and then safe housing. And they define safe housing as not only the structure of the housing, but that it has safe drinking water as well as electricity.
So it's $2.30. But to be considered lifted out of poverty, you have to be given assured free food, free clothing, just housing, which means that it's structurally sound. You have, she said clean drinking water. Did she say electricity? As well as medical care and also compulsory care. They literally have a higher official extreme poverty line than the World Bank. World Bank's $1.90 USD. China's is third limited USD. Like, even with that argument, it falls flat. Thank you, Elijah, for resubscribing.
So the actual program itself followed what's called a multi-dimensional approach to looking at poverty. It's not just about handing out money, it's not just about your income, but actually kind of the various facets about what.
All right, guys, got it. Let's do a Stoney Progressive. I am going to share this out. While I do so, Anybody who jumps on, go ahead and share and like it as well. Let's start taking down some politicians and talking about real issues that we have, and we can maybe make some advance. We need protests. We need rallies. We do not need politicians not sticking up for us. And that's what we get. So I'm going to go ahead and share this link while we wait for the moderator and maybe a couple more joiners. Share this on Minds. Probably throw it on Hive later. Always use those independent sites. Try to earn that crypto. We'll be talking a little bit about crypto today. I'm going to react to Crypto's RS a little bit later. Because the crypto world is going wild. It is in the dip. It's time to buy the dip. I don't spend money because I don't have money, but if you want to invest, this might be your last time. What should we tag this with here, guys? What do we got? So I'm going to throw this on Twitter and on Minds, and we can get this night started. Trying to figure out how I was going to get to every single politician in the country, and I'm going to have to do at least 2 a night to get there by election time. So we are going to keep on pushing. As a bartender, I will have to take some weekend nights off once in a while. Sorry for not streaming last night. I'll try to do it every night, a little after midnight, and we will keep this going. All right. So we got this on Minds. You were listening earlier. We were doing a little Jackson Hinkle. I like to listen to Jackson late night. He's a bit younger than me, so it's a nice way for me to keep up on some things. And it's just good to have multiple sources to get your news from. You should never have one source. You should never pigeonhole yourself. You should never rely on only one person. There's always multiple ways of looking at things. All right. I'm going to throw the link on there when I see Jackson maybe leaving for the day. Try to catch a few people to join us tonight. But for now, let's do Stoney Progressive. Let us blaze one up. We're going to start out with, there's 2 major events going on, I'd say, this weekend, and at the moment, we do have the Brussels protests, anti-max mandate protests, and then we have some massive dips in crypto, and that I would say would be our biggest concerns today. But we'll get to both of those after we attack some politicians. And let's start out the evening with one of my favorite people. And I say favorite because it is entertainment. And we're getting into this now. Starting out to see how she goes about her day to day. We will start out with the White House today. I didn't get to see this one the other day, and of course, part 2 of Jen.
Thank you, Jen. Why would the U.S. agree to submit written answers to Russia, given that it could undermine or be used to discredit the U.S. negotiating position? And is the U.S. asking for any written responses from Russia?
Well, no one sees it that way from the U.S. negotiating team or from our partners and allies around the world. I think what we're engaged in here is seeing what's possible as it relates to diplomacy. And as I noted, it's not written answers like we're filling out a Q&A. We're also going to convey what our concerns are and reiterate a number of the strong statements you've heard the President and Secretary Blinken convey very publicly. So this is just a part of the diplomatic process and diplomatic negotiations, and has been a standard part of the process.
Just to start out, I started it here because she just seems so condescending. Like, she's like, this is just part of diplomat, process. And I mean, you should know this, shouldn't you? Aren't you a political? It's just, I feel like it's condescending. Maybe that's just because I'm a junkie here, but of politics, I just love this stuff. But I feel like she's being condescending.
Process often with countries and nations where you have agreements, but also disagreements.
Does the president have a plan to evacuate Americans from Ukraine?
I know there have been a range of reports out this morning, which is probably why you're asking, Jackie. I will say that, one, we are already...
Like, wow, you did some journalism on all the reports, and now you're asking me a question.
At a level 4 travel advisory for Ukraine for COVID, and have advised that U.S. citizens have been advising that U.S. citizens should be aware of reports that Russia is planning for significant military action against Ukraine. We do conduct rigorous contingency planning, as we always do in the event of any security situation deteriorates in any country around the world. The State Department does that assessment. I would point you to them for any predictions or previews of any steps they may take.
Is there any effort right now to get a handle on how many Americans are in Ukraine? Because I remember with Afghanistan, that was sort of an open question. Is the dynamic different this time?
It's an open question around the world. We don't put a chip in Americans when they go to countries around the world and track their movements. People can...
Not yet. Not yet. Just the way even she said it was like, we don't do that. We're going to wait for the next regime. I mean, president.
Register with the State Department. That's something they do. Or they may choose not to register. Or there might be people in any country around the world who are dual citizens who haven't lived in or have never lived in the United States. But the State Department would certainly have the number in terms of Americans who have registered with the State Department.
And then, is the president aware that he was caught on a hot mic yesterday? And why does he appear to be dismissing the idea of proactive deterrence?
Well, the president certainly does not dismiss that idea, considering he has taken a lot of steps.
Proactive deterrence. Oh, that's a mouthful to say we're going to strike first.
Including supporting and approving the several sanctions that were put out by the Treasury Department just a couple of days ago. I would note that the United States has delivered more security assistance to Ukraine in the last year than any point in history. In the last year alone, we committed $650 million in security assistance to Ukraine. In total, since 2014, we have committed $2.7 billion. These deliveries are ongoing, including today. There's more deliveries coming. In addition to traditional security assistance, such as the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, the President has authorized the Presidential Drawdown Authority to expedite lethal aid and meet Ukraine's emergency defense needs. We've also utilized third-party transfers authorized by the State Department, allowing U.S. allies and partners to provide U.S. origin equipment from their inventories for use by Ukraine. Specifically, the State Department has given the go-ahead for 3 NATO allies to rush anti-armor missiles and other U.S.-made weapons to Ukraine. And finally, in identifying additional equipment held in DoD inventories that can be delivered under the Excess Defense Articles Program, among other mechanisms, we recently notified Congress of our intent to deliver M17 helicopters. So,
sounds like she maybe had that answer ready. Like they released some stuff today, and then she had a factorial answer completely ready for that question. So you're condescending and like, oh, I can't believe you asked me that, and then I literally have the answer here.
I would say the president is hardly waiting. Actions are pretty clear on that front.
And then I want to ask you about something that you said yesterday.
Sure.
You told me in response to it was a Ukraine question, it's important to remember who the aggressor is here. The aggressor is Russia, and Putin, they are building up military troops. They are pushing out misinformation in Ukraine. So why does it seem like U.S. officials are so concerned about being seen as escalating things if Russia has created this whole crisis?
Because I think we want the American public and also the global community to be clear-eyed about propaganda. And they are pushing propaganda about Ukrainians. Certainly there's propaganda pushed here in the United States, but this is about a potential foreign conflict. It's about the buildup of troops by one power.
There certainly is propaganda in the United States. I'll give you that.
That is a much larger military power than the other on the border, and we want to be very clear with the public about the realities and the facts.
One final question on a different topic.
Yeah.
On crime, yesterday the Manhattan DA clarified his memo about downgrading certain crimes, and he said armed robberies, for instance, will be prosecuted as felonies. Violence against police officers won't be tolerated, clearing up some of the confusion around how that office intended to prosecute crimes. Does the White House have a reaction to that, or welcome that kind of clarification, given that these questions do keep resurfacing?
I don't have any reaction from here to the decisions of a local district, I think a district prosecutor or a district attorney, DA. I would say that the president, and he'll talk about this, he'll talk about crime. And he asked me about this yesterday, but I think can expect to hear him talk a little bit about crime during his remarks later this afternoon. The president believes that no one in this country should worry about whether it's safe to ride the subway or the bus or go to work or walk home at night. And that's why he's put more cops on the beat, has stepped up efforts to get illegal guns off the streets, and invested in proven community anti-violence programs. It's also why he's doubled federal support for community policing with $300 million more for cities, plus another $700 million more to bolster federal law enforcement. We've been working with mayors and local leaders on this, but I think the president's record, his commitment, speaks for itself. Go ahead.
Also had all the facts ready for that one too. So we were absolutely locked, ready, loaded. We know what questions are coming, and she had the answer ready to go. I mean, I'm not saying it's not smart. I'm just saying it's not like we're blindsiding her, asking her tough questions, and she still acts condescending about like all of it, the whole situation. It's fantastic. So let's talk about some crypto. This is who I watch most of the time, my regular, and I mean, I pay attention to a lot of people on Twitter, but as far as videos, this is what I usually do. I think I got about 6+ minutes here I wanted to check out, and I have not watched it. I just wanted to, I haven't caught this yet today, so.
A lot of fear this weekend. You guys know me. I've been streaming and keeping you guys focused, hopefully keeping you guys engaged, but, you know, a lot of big YouTubers just called it quits. So I was interacting with a few guys in the live chat just now. Meet Kevin. If you look at his latest video, the comments are horrendous. People are really going at Kevin because he created a video yesterday saying that he sold everything. Not only that, he's playing a dangerous game of trying to short the market. So he went from investor to somehow a risky trader for some reason. But it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's not just him. BitBoy was very down this morning. Also, a lot of other influencers basically just really bearish, right? And I've said, you know what? When everyone is so sure, so bearish, that's usually when you want to get away from that crowd. Get away from the herd mentality. You know what? Make your own decision, right? And you know what? Right now it's looking like a pretty good decision because the market looks like it wants to open up green tomorrow. Now, obviously, the FOMC meeting is not until Tuesday and Wednesday, but it does seem like some traders are recognizing that maybe the market is just a little bit too oversold, and maybe people have overreacted a bit too much without knowing exactly what Fed Chairman Powell is going to be announcing on Wednesday, right? So it does seem like people are coming back in slowly. But again, fear is still high. Doesn't mean that people are just jumping completely back in, but it's nice to see that there are some greens for today. Although, let's not kid ourselves, it's still very, very, very down versus the last 7 days and 30 days. Yes, I recognize that, but it's always good to see some green, right? For our mental health, green is good. Green is good. But let's take a look at some of the things that's going on.
Absolutely. For mental health, green is good. Don't stress the dip. I don't even buy, all right? So, like, I have these little things where I earn crypto. And as I said at the beginning of the stream, I dropped this on Mines. I dropped it on Hive and D2. And I try to earn me some crypto. And got a couple $1,000 portfolio. And that's all just from little tiny games. Earncrypto.com. I love that. And then you got to trade. You got to find what's going to explode and what's going to die. And that's what we're here doing. And if any of you have money to invest, this this might be a time for you to try it out and give it a shot.
There are some of these projects I wanted to share with you guys, but before I get into that, two things. Number one, the 10 largest Bitcoin down draws or corrections or crypto winters, whatever you want, dumps, right? The largest in history. Top 10, what we went through right now is considered number 7. Pretty significant, negative 47%, but it's still ranked only 7. And look at rank number 1, 93% down, right? That was very early on in 2011 still. Then we had 85%, 83%. That was pretty recent. 71%, 53%. That was also recent. That was last year. 49%, 47, 41, 37, 36. But it goes to show you that, yeah, Bitcoin does tend to be volatile at times, and it does suck when you're sitting through one of these. However, if you continue to hold strong, you continue to have conviction in what you're holding, and you continue to hodl and DCA for the future because you are an investor, not a trader, you would have won, right?
So I'm an earner, not a trader. And in moments like this is when I push and do as much of the games or, as much of the little mining things I can possibly do to earn those. I mean, like current, you charge your phone and listen to music. I use an old dead phone, an old broken up phone. I throw that on there and charge it a bunch of times, and I earn $5 like in 5 days of crypto. And I throw it into my Bitcoin. Earning $40-50 of crypto this month, that could be a couple $1,000s in 10 years. So I'm an earner. I'm a saver.
Because every single time a down draw has happened, or every single dip, every single correction, when everyone else is panicking, right, you have stayed in, and every single time Bitcoin continued forward and continued higher, right? So just to put things in perspective, right now I have 47%. Negative 47%, not good, but still only ranked 7th out of all the top drawdowns that we had. So there's that. And something else that is very positive, all this talk about, the Fed tightening, right? But here's the interesting thing. If you look at S&P 500, you look at all the years where the Fed started to tighten and raised interest rates and start tapering their bond buying, guess what? Almost every single year, the S&P still went up, which is interesting, right? You would figure it's the negative. It would be that, but it's not. Actually, S&P actually went up significantly in most of those years. Quite interesting. Now, this is the S&P 500, not the NASDAQ. We know that Wall Street tends to sell off the riskier assets such as tech, right? And then they turn to non-risky assets, which could be in a Dow or S&P 500. But then again, if I had one of these charts showing tech, specifically the big tech, how they performed during tightening, I bet the numbers would be even higher. Because just look at how much tech has gone up over the last 20, 30 years. I mean, there's no comparison. But what's faster than tech stock is Bitcoin and crypto. Okay, so just remember that nothing is moving faster or is a better investment, in my opinion, than crypto. Nothing else is close. All right, so just want to lead off with those things. Now, let's talk about some of these crypto projects, some of these L1s that you.
So then he's going to go into Solana, Fathom, and DeFi, and it goes way over my head. Like I said, I'm a basic earner. Just going to earn what I can, and luckily getting into Steem and Hive earlier, I've earned a few hundred of those, and they're currently worth like $1.50 to 30 cents, and get a few hundred of each. It earns up. So go out there, try mines, try Hive. They're their platforms to blog onto, and mines earns you Ethereum, just straight up Ethereum you can burn into and earn yourself some crypto. Don't have to actually invest to get there, guys. So now we are going to start, and I want to make sure I know the time on this. All right, we're going to start out with our Stoney PRogressive Takedown. This week, I wanted to do a bigger name while we try to build this up. A bigger name from my home state of Michigan, and Rashida Tlaib. She was I believe she was one of the original Justice Democrats and a progressive voice, of course. I don't actually say that she is a progressive. I'd say she is a progressive voice because that's what the Democrats would call her. If you are from her district or have an issue, 202-225-5126, 202-225-5126. That is her DC office. That is how you push these congressional members, is by leaving voicemails, leaving many voicemails, addressing concerns, be direct, be sharp, do it during the day so they actually are there. And if they have 1,000 messages about one topic, they will start to move. They will start to reform. And again, the basic clerk's office gets you what their committees are: Committee of Financial Services, Committee of Natural Resources, the Committee on Oversight and Reform, Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. She's a lawyer, so big family, Detroit, and lawyer. That's the things I knew about her going in. So I didn't actually get to her on this. I was having a Open Secrets. She was on the floor complaining about having student debt, and so when you go to her Open Secrets page, there it is. She has about $88,000 of student loans, but she does have a rental property, some sort of a savings, and a house. So she has a rental property, but $80,000 of student loan. So she's made her choices. And again, this is somebody who has $80,000 of student loan, but makes $174,000 a year. With all of your benefits paid for by the government, she's having a rough time, I guess. For assets worth $100,000 to $400,000. She has a real estate property. That just said $175,000. This says $100,000 to $250,000. With everything on the planet spiking, I'm sure the house might have been worth $100,000, but it's now worth $300,000. A small savings account, again, that said 16. An IRA, small IRA, and so she's not. It doesn't show that she's well off. She's only been in it for a short time, and she's actually trying to fight. But as we know, with everybody, always got to follow the money. And not so many big investors here. This is definitely cleaner than AOC just being funded by University of California and the Alphabet Company. Definitely a lot of bigger businesses, but not an overall mass amount. She's not going to have any PACs. That's one thing she's clean on. But she did get a bit of money from that first round from Microsoft, University of California, an engineering company, U of M, real estate group, and of course, Move On. Well, Move On is going to be small donors. Apple and Alpha Inc. That's Google and Apple. There we are, always putting their dipping into the progressives. Good for them. So again, she's pretty new. She ran last general election. She took her district pretty well. This is Detroit and the greater Detroit area. Cities typically run blue. Rural areas typically run red. Why do all cities vote blue? Because they're cities. Because you have empathy for people when you work next to them all day, I guess. I don't know. But she took the area pretty well, and she took her primary right away. So she has a district that won't really push her too hard as far as getting primary a second time. Now that she's in the seat, they probably won't push her. But I guess she what is going on here? So they had a recount? She won on a recount? All sorts of weird. So yeah, she's not perfect. Her money comes from Microsoft and Alphabet
for working with me on this
always.
important amendment and for their leadership on this bill. I can't thank him enough and look forward to him one day coming to my district to come and visit one of our VA hospitals that we love and cherish. The transition of being an active duty to be for our veterans is not easy, transitioning from being active duty. And eVest Act helps with that transition and makes life easier for those who served our nation. This act is also a great opportunity to review the automatic enrollment programs and learn what works and what doesn't, because ensuring effective implementation is critical to its success. I'm a social worker at heart, and we have to make sure and ensure that our veterans' lives are changing for the better with this bill. So my amendment ensures the lessons learned during the implementation of the program are preserved for other agencies, as well as to learn, again, what to do and what not to do. And again, I appreciate, again, the committee and for working with me on this, and look forward for my colleagues in supporting this amendment. And I also look forward to working with the committee on a number of other issues impacting our veterans, especially veteran suicide and access to mental health services. With that, I yield, and again, thank the committee.
Well, that sounds like a positive. That's all you gotta do. Try to find somebody you agree with 75% of the time. And I don't know, she's in that 50-60% range from what I watch. She does a lot of corporate Democrat stuff still. She voted for Pelosi. That's always negative. Nope.
Of the people have a Madam Speaker, I rise today to make it clear that we as representatives of the people have a clear mandate to protect, restore, and expand voting rights in our nation. In my hometown of Detroit, election workers and community members were intimidated, shouted at, disrespected for simply counting the votes of our community, a majority Black community, in November of 2020. People banged on the windows, Madam Speaker, from the counting room, just because they didn't want Black and brown votes to be counted. Our community was treated like we were unworthy of making our voices heard at the ballot box. This should not be so complicated. If our colleagues in the Senate fail to pass the Freedom to Vote, the John Lewis Act, and their inaction will send a clear message to folks that support voter suppression. Voter suppression is not okay. It simply is not. Intimidating our election workers is not okay. Inaction is not an option, and we must deliver for the people. Thank you, and I yield.
Voter repression is not okay. City of Detroit lost 100,000 ballots. Or no, it was 20,000 ballots in the city of Detroit were lost, and they're said to be Bernie votes in the primary against Hillary 2015, 2016. So no, all votes should be counted. That state should have been recounted, and Hillary should have not taken anything out of Michigan. But the Democratic Party doesn't actually care about if your vote counts. They like to say it only on the national election. They don't care about their primary elections. So that's the Democrats. She I mean, she wouldn't want to bring that up, but we can scream about voting rights right now. That's fine. So yeah, that's Rashida Tlaib in a quick overview. Not the worst. Her money isn't horrible, but as always, they all have connections. They're all in it. Nobody's clean once they get there. So I am going to set up Kevin McCarthy. While I do that, we are going to check out Luke of We Are Change old video. I'm digging this up on YouTube. But we're going to check this out, and it's been like a year and a half or so since I've watched it.
Well, hello from Jeffrey Epstein's island. I'm walking around the whole island. There's like no one here. Very interesting place. The swimming pool looks like it's in good shape. So oddly quiet here.
Oh, golf carts. Get the fuck
What? Shit.
Hurry up, you guys. Get your asses on there. Epstein Island. Jeff and Luke.
Holy shit. Crap, I can't believe we're here. Oh, crap.
This is a Gradowski of wearechange.org here with Jeff Berwick, the dollar vigilante, off yet another crazy, insane adventure, this time to Jeff. And there's a lot of things we're going to have to get into in this video, but I don't even know where to begin. I mean, just even being here, it was difficult finding a boat operator. Jeff, just start it off from here.
Well, we were in the area and we thought, no one's ever gone on this island. No real media, anyone really that I know of has ever gone on. We only get the information from the government and the mainstream media, and those are the two things you can never trust with information. So we're like, well, I guess we have to go and check this out and see if it's even real. For all we know, there might not be anything there. Like, it's always lies what they tell us. And for all we know, there could still be some activity going on there. Maybe Bill Clinton's there, maybe Jeffrey Epstein's there. No one's looking into this. So we took it upon ourselves to, well, let's do it. But it wasn't easy. Most captains said they wouldn't take us to the island. There's all kinds of, you're in different countries on different islands, so we had to work our way around that, make sure we weren't doing too many illegal things all at once. And yeah, just rolling up to the island and actually seeing that temple, which is there, so we have verified that. This is a lot of verification of what is actually there, was pretty surreal.
Yeah, and it was also kind of a little daunting, a little scary kind of going in there because, in some jurisdictions, you could just get shot and killed for going on private property. And this is someone that's for some of the worst, most despicable acts in this world. The interconnectedness of Jeffrey Epstein is just absolutely mind-boggling. I mean, we're talking about billionaires, leaders, bankers, the most influential people who were on that island, and there was really no one else to verify it. All of I've really seen from independent media is a guy who is anonymous or a girl who is anonymous that is flying drones over the island and just documenting what is there. So
Is he really?
So again, this is Luke of We Are Change on the bottom here. Check it out. This is his highlighted YouTube page video that is very first when you click on his page, and then you can check out for yourself. I think this might it's gonna make my stream if I play this too long. So again, Luke of We Are Change. That is his title video, very first video. When you click on his site, that is what you'll get. But let us go to another video, more newsworthy, and everything the Gray Zone does is quality stuff. This is one of their shows.
And this is Redlines. My guest today is Francisco Rodriguez. He's the executive director of Oil for Venezuela and also a fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Welcome back to Redlines, Francisco.
Thank you, Anya. It's great to be here.
You just released or published a report that you've been working on for quite a while titled Sanctions, Economic Statecraft, and Venezuela's Crisis. It was published and commissioned by the Sanctions and Security Research Project. And you take a look at how U.S. sanctions have impacted economic and social conditions in Venezuela, paying special attention to the country's oil sector. You begin by laying out the economic contraction Venezuela experienced between the years 2012 and 2020, finding that its GDP contracted by about 74% over that 8-year period. You write that, quote, "This is the 6th largest contraction in world history and the largest one in Latin American history since 1950. It is also the 2nd largest contraction in the world outside of war." How did you go about assessing the role U.S. sanctions played in bringing that contraction about?
Okay, so, well, the first thing that we did is that we started looking at how it is that sanctions affected the Venezuelan economy's capacity to generate foreign currency revenue. So this is an economy that's highly dependent on oil. Oil accounted for 96% of its export revenue. And therefore, we wanted to look very carefully at the effects on the oil industry. And what we found is that when you look at the time series of Venezuelan oil production, it's very clear that whenever there was an intensification of sanctions, whenever there was a key sanctions decision, it would cause a change in the trend of oil production. This didn't just happen once. It happened, we identified in the data 3 times. In August of 2017 with the financial sanctions, then in January of 2019 with the oil sanctions, and in February of 2020 with the secondary oil sanctions. This is the equivalent in terms of time series data of having a person suffer 3 episodes of anaphylactic shock after 3 separate incidents of consuming seafood. So if it happens once, you can still entertain reasonable hypotheses about there being other potential causes. But if it happens 3 times, that's pretty decisive evidence. But we decided to go beyond that and look more carefully at what was happening at specific firms in Venezuela by studying the Orinoco Basin. This is the region where most of the country's oil is produced, and it's a region in which there's an extensive array of joint ventures with multinational companies. So we could look at the effect that financial sanctions had on the firms that had access to finance prior to the sanctions and those that did not have access to finance prior to the sanctions. And what we found, consistent with the hypothesis that sanctions were driving the effect, is that the firms that had access to finance, that therefore that access was closed off by sanctions, suffered disproportionately from the effect of sanctions. So all of this is very strong empirical evidence that sanctions have been a key contributing factor to the decline of Venezuelan foreign currency revenue, which in itself has been the main driver of the country's massive economic contraction.
You mentioned the time series data showing Venezuela's oil production over the years. I wanted to bring that chart up again for viewers. It shows that production was stable up until 2016. That's when global crude prices collapsed altogether. Many countries suffered drops in production during that time. You highlight 3 other inflection points in that graph, which you've mentioned, all correspond with a new measure or a new level of U.S. sanctions targeting Venezuela. And you actually describe this picture as a rare time series equivalent of a smoking gun. How does the comparison to regional oil producers such as Colombia, Mexico, and Argentina help inform that statement that this is actually a smoking gun, showing a relationship between U.S. sanctions and a drop in oil production?
Well, actually, those 3 cases are very interesting because those are cases that are similar in some respects to Venezuela. Colombia and Venezuela are neighbors, but also geologically, a lot of their oil comes essentially from the same region. Mexico and Argentina have had some of the same management issues at the oil industry that have typically been pointed at in the case of Venezuela. They have state-owned firms. They have significant political intervention in the management of oil resources. So these are all cases where we would expect that the behavior might be, no 2 countries are exactly alike, but that the behavior might be similar to that of Venezuela. And effectively, in those 3 cases, we find that when oil prices collapse at the beginning of 2016, and just to refresh your memory a bit with that, oil prices had been for several years at around $100 a barrel, and then in mid-2014 they start declining, and then towards the end of 2015 and 2016, really the floor falls from under them and they fall to below $30 a barrel. That's a moment where a lot of oil producers start struggling. So there we see a decline in Venezuelan oil production that hadn't happened until then. As you point out, it was stable up until January 2016 occur, but we also see the same decline occur in Colombia, in Argentina, in Mexico. But then what happens is that after August of 2017, which was when the first financial sanctions were imposed in Venezuela, at that moment, oil prices were increasing. They were recovering, and they were going from having been around $30 a barrel, going up to $60, $70 a barrel. That's a moment at which you would have expected oil production to stabilize, because the conditions of these oil producing firms were better. Obviously, if you're selling your product for twice what you were selling it a year ago, then that means that you can have more resources to be able to invest in maintaining your activity. And indeed, that's what we see happen in other countries, but we don't see it happening in Venezuela. In Venezuela, it's the complete opposite. When oil production should have stabilized or recovered, and where oil industry analysts were expecting and projecting that oil production would stabilize or recover, what we see is an acceleration of the drop precisely at the moment at which the first sanctions, those are the August 2017 financial sanctions, were imposed.
And this is when, as you're making these points, critics of Venezuela's government tend to bring up very common talking points, which you actually address in your study. These are talking points that are used generally to obscure the impact of sanctions. And I wanted to give you the chance to respond here for viewers who are watching and listening as well. The first point that people often bring up is that Venezuela's oil sector was underperforming before the 2017 sanctions were imposed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can watch the whole thing. That's going to be a great interview. Gray Zone, Red Lines, and she does a great show. I'm not going to be able to, but Anya Pranopel does a great work, and give her some time. So let's go ahead and move on. Give her a shout. This is Tom Hartman's old show. I haven't watched it in a while. This will be a complete new in reaction.
For years, we've heard talk radio and cable news conservatives carp about redistribution of wealth from the wealthy accomplished to lazy takers. And as we've been coping with COVID, wealth has been moving, but in the opposite direction. By one reckoning, a new billionaire has been minted every 26 hours since the pandemic began. And economist Richard Wolff reminds us that history recommends against this widening wealth gap.
This is the kind of situation we once learned was true of the ancient pyramids in ancient Egypt, when you had some people, building pyramids to their family while other people couldn't eat. There's 3,000 or 4,000 billionaires in the whole world. Whatever success you want them to have is coming at the expense of hundreds of millions, of billions of people who are denied success because they haven't the money to have a decent home or to get a proper education or to be healthy enough to learn. We are stifling the success of huge numbers by shifting wealth this way.
Who are the newly filthy rich? Let's ask RT Boombust co-anchor Brent Jabbour. You have reported that just 10 people own more wealth than 3.1 billion other people combined. Who are some of the heavy hitters?
I got to tell you, Holland, I read this stat and it actually made me angry because I was like, this can't be logical. It can't be real.
A typo.
No, but it's for sure real. And I want to take a look at some of the names here because Elon Musk of Tesla, he's the richest man right now, and his net worth increased $122 billion last year. Now, a lot of these guys, their money is obviously in the stock market, so their stock price for Tesla is up nearly 1,000% since the onset of the pandemic. Now, you're going to remember his net worth jumped about $40 billion in 1 or 2 days when Hertz made a deal to purchase a whole bunch of Teslas to add to their fleet. Now, another name you probably know of course, Jeff Bezos. He's the founder of Amazon. His increase last year by about $5 billion. Amazon stock is up more than 65% since markets dipped at the start of the pandemic. Obviously, e-commerce became a crucial part amid lockdowns, which just pushed things up even further. Bill Gates of Microsoft, he grew about $7 billion. That's paltry compared to some of these guys, right? Now, Microsoft stock has doubled since the start of the pandemic, and you'll remember as people went to work from home and kids were doing school from home, people started to go to Microsoft Teams and things like Zoom as well. Now, Larry Page of Google, he's the co-founder there. He grew nearly $50 billion. Google stock jumped more than 150% since the lows at the beginning of the pandemic. And one you may not actually know is Bernard Arnault. He's from LVMH Moet Hennessy, and he's actually for a short period of time was the world's richest man, Holland, and his wealth grew by more than $60 billion. Again, as some had excess cash amid the K-shaped recovery, luxury brands were able to thrive during that time. And of course, Mark Zuckerberg is also on that list. He grew by about $25 billion.
I'm not surprised that we've all been drinking more during the pandemic. But now here comes inflation. Whenever we buy anything, how much of this instant wealth is flowing to those who are selling at higher prices?
Well, if you just look at what happened with corporate profits last year, when inflation became a real problem, especially in 2021, in the second quarter of 2021, profits rose by 10.5% to a record $2.4 trillion, while the third quarter saw a rise of 4.3%, hitting another record above $2.5 trillion. Now, as we are in the midst of the fourth quarter earnings seasons right now, S&P 500 companies, those are the largest traded companies here in the United States, they're expected to go up 22.4% in the fourth quarter. And overall corporate profits throughout the whole 2021, a small 49% increase for these guys as you're paying more. So it's safe to say, as these giant multinational companies, they worry about inflation pressures, they're for sure seeing a profit. And look at the car industry, Holland. We're seeing record prices in automobiles right now in both new and used due to limited supply from those supply chain issues we've all talked so much about. But as people are willing to pay for them, they'll continue to go up. You also have an issue of shrinkflation as well, Holland. I want to keep that in mind because some of these companies, they're not raising their price, they're keeping the price the same, but instead of getting 20 Oreos, you might get 15.
The help wanted sign is everywhere. It's a seller's market for anybody who knows how to do anything, so wages are going up too, but at what proportion to the way prices are going up?
Well, wages are becoming an issue as well because amid the great resignation, as they've called it, we've heard about companies being forced to pay more, but the reality is the average is offering just about 3.4% while we're seeing a 7% inflation. And much of the sentiment from business owners, these people who are in charge of raises, well, they're saying, well, we don't want to give them a 7% raise because inflation eventually regulates itself. It'll come down. Those prices aren't here to stay. But look, Holland, we know. I don't know if you know, what was the price of milk when you were a kid? I know when I was a kid in the 1990s, it was about $1.50 a gallon. Where is it at now? Close to $4 per gallon. So those prices don't ever come down, Holland. They stabilize.
Yeah, Brent Jabbour from Boom Bust, the one business show you can't afford to miss.
That's a great.
They stabilize. That's exactly right. They are not going to come down. Our incomes aren't going to go up that much, but the prices will be all higher after all of this, and they'll stay higher. They'll make it last long enough that we'll forget that they'll just say this is the new thing, even though everybody's going to be back. They can be all automated, and they'll still have these prices jacked up. They won't automate it because that would actually cost them money. So not so bad. I did stop watching when it went off from Tom Hartman, but let's do a Stoney PRogressive takedown, guys. One more. Kevin McCarthy. He is a Republican from Bakersville. Ooh, a Republican from Bakersville. That whole socialist state has this guy being a very affluent area of the inland LA area, and so he is your Republican socialist. I thought they're all socialists in California. I hear this all the time at the bar. So 202-225-2915, 202-225-2915. Let's if you dislike your representative, let them know that they're not doing their job for you. So Kevin McCarthy, the California representative, for quite a while he's been in politics, and he has raised himself quite a sum of money. And guess what? Goldman Sachs is always on somebody's top. That's always fun because Goldman Sachs, they're nice and neutral. Comcast, fantastic. Blue Cross Blue Shield. So yeah, he's never going to be for Medicare for all. He's Blue Cross Blue Shield bought. Health professions, oil and gas, securities, investments, and real estate. That's his bread and butter. So he doesn't care about middle America. Holy wow. And he raised a lot of money in 2020. Good for him. Why does he need that much? That's an interesting question. I want to look and see where's he putting that money at? He hasn't ran a competitive race in a while. So yeah, they've been behind the super PACs lately, but $1.5 million from lobbyists, $1.5 million from lawyers, law firms, and Republican conservative firms. A lot of money from oil, gas, security, and real estate. Goldman Sachs, Comcast, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Oracle Group, Wells Fargo. So yeah, I think he should get to wear these. We should make him a coat. Go ahead and somebody take that top 10 there that are Citigroup, Bank of America, AT&T, Chevron, Wells Fargo, Oracle, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Comcast, and Goldman Sachs, and just make him a nice big old coat, put it all around him. He can wear that with flying colors, so at least the people around him know who he's actually working for. He's not working for us. That's what I have to say about Kevin McCarthy. And he is not, as a Stoney progressive, let's go ahead and say, he is not for cannabis at all. He's okay with the cannabis businesses using banks, but not that they do something legal. How does that work? This is fantastic. He thinks that they can use the banks, but their whole basis is completely illegal. So That's how much of a capitalist he is. Fantastic. I wanted to see, let's be fair and balanced here, guys.
We may not have fair and free elections.
The president has been consistent on this issue, and the issue at hand.
Are you concerned that without these voting rights bills, the election results won't be legitimate?
I'm absolutely concerned about that.
So there you have Democrats a bit doubling down at times on the president's suggestion that midterms may not be legitimate. That is, unless they say Congress passes the party's bill to federalize elections. Here to talk about that, more things, the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. And sir, good morning.
First of all, it should be a day off. Everybody should have that day. Like, we have all these Monday holidays. Why can't we have that be a Monday holiday? You can go vote Sunday or Monday. And bam, have people have the day off so actual people can go out and vote. It's so undemocratic.
Morning to you. Thanks for coming back. The quote from the president on Wednesday was, "I think it easily could be illegitimate." Jen Psaki came on yesterday and said he was absolutely not suggesting that. How did you hear it?
Well, every day we hear something from the president, and the next day we hear the correction. So I'm not quite sure what the president.
Same with the last president.
Is talking about on each motion bill. This makes no sense, because if anyone read the bills of what they want to do, their H.R. 1 and others, they really want to have a speech czar. They want to have taxpayer money pay for campaigns. And in their very first bill that they put forward, Schumer would have gotten $40 million of taxpayer money for his campaign. They want to politicize the Federal Election Committee. Instead of being an equal number of Republicans or equal number of Democrats, they want to weight it towards the Democratic side. I don't know if they're doing this because they know what's going to happen, that they know they're going to lose the majority. I mean, they got 28 Democrats today already announced retirements. And in 290 days and 13 hours, the American public is going to be able to have their voice heard. I bet that retirement number goes well over 30. And remember, in 2010, when they lost 63 seats and they had a high retirement, that was just 17 retirements at that time.
He said that he's going to try to get out and travel a lot more. He's going to be out on the campaign trail. He's going to talk about his accomplishments. Does that concern you at all when it comes to the races that you're trying to win?
No, I want him in those races. You look at his approval rating, I bet he doesn't have one member of Congress in the Democratic Party asking him to come. Are they going to ask the president, the vice president, or Nancy Pelosi? I would welcome them coming out. Let's explain why inflation and the prices are so high. Let's explain why there's crime in the streets day in and day out.
All these things are not one-year problems. They're 10-year problems. They're 30-year problems. They're not one-year problems or one-year solutions. So that's ignorant politicians being ignorant morons and just trying to talk in sound bites. Oh my God, dude, none of those issues happened this year. Everything you're talking about is at least 10 to 20 year plan.
Let's explain why the borders are open and they won't go visit it or do anything to deter it. Let's explain why the world is not safe anymore based upon his handling Afghanistan with 13 new Gold Star families. And now he could have more blood on his hands based upon how he welcomed Putin to invade and an incursion into Ukraine. I mean, there is issue after issue that the American public cares about. His biggest problem, he's not out there listening.
No. Absence of Stacey Abrams in Georgia about a week ago may portend some of that. We'll see whether or not you're right. I've talked to a lot of folks in Washington about the number of seats that you're targeting. Some people say it's high as 70. Others say it's 45. What is it more realistically, you believe? Is it close to the 45 or 70?
Targeting is what you're going to campaign in. And after looking at New Jersey and Virginia, remember, President Biden won New Jersey a year prior by 16 points. He won Virginia by 10. So I would say any Democrat who sits in a seat where Biden won by 16 or less, it's a competitive seat, and we should challenge it. We're getting amazing recruitments coming out. Remember, in the last election, we had more Republican women got elected to Congress than in any time in history.
Right.
The diversity of what we're finding. That means we can compete anywhere. We won seats that Biden won by more than 15 points. Our best state in the last election was California, defeating 4 Democrats.
And you might see more of that, right? The way things are going, you might see more of it. But one of the things the president said in his press conference the other day is that he can't explain, and he doesn't know what Republicans stand for. One of the things that happened in the press
And don't forget that there's mass movements this last year, you idiots. And a lot of those Republican people are back here in Florida. And yeah, so a lot of your Republican buddies that were in California have moved to Texas or Florida. So you might actually have lost some Republicans in that state, but never take secondary things. Never think about a secondary issue. Only talk about one issue and one problem with the issue and one thing we're going to do to stop it. It's never a multi-issue. It's never deeper than just the
Government says you did not have any questions on crime at all. We just had Jesse Waters on. He went and talked to a diverse group of people down there at Union Square.
I don't care what his opinion. Let's give this 20 seconds or so. Oh, delightful. No volume on it.
Asking ourselves one question. Is America better off after 12 months of one-party rule in Washington? Well, let's recap to see what the answer to that question is. 1 million kids started the year off once again, dealing with abrupt school closures, returning to more uncertainty and disruption. I know you heard it from so many parents, being stuck once again. Homicides in 2021 were near record highs. In several major cities like Philadelphia and Portland, murders hit the highest rate in the city's history. Now we have the reason you're all here. We have the highest inflation rate in 40 years, causing prices to surge. That increase you see there all happened under President Biden's watch. To put that number in perspective, here is the real impact inflation is having on soaring prices. Americans are paying on a daily basis. 50% in gas, used cars up 37%, hotels 28%, beef 19%. Now that's only if you could actually find it. Consumers been to the store recently? Over the past week, Americans have shared their experiences of dealing with empty shelves and sparse supply while doing their grocery shopping. By nearly every single measure, America is worse off than we were before Joe Biden took office. And despite the slews of ongoing crisis, what did the president do and where did he travel this week? Did he go to a school to advocate for our children to return to the classrooms? No, he did not. Not to one of the communities dealing with the historic crime surge. And we know he didn't go to the border to see the situation firsthand because he's been avoiding that crisis all year. No, the President of the United States went to Atlanta to appease his Twitter base, spread falsehoods, and to disparage millions of Americans. You know, the Biden agenda is now so toxic that the Daily Beast, now that's far from a right-leaning publication, recently dubbed it as a Build Back Quieter, because even Democrats are actively avoiding talking about it. And by the way, I have a question for all of you. Did anyone in this room find out where Stacey Abrams' scheduling conflict was all about? Well, maybe we just found the answer. Need any other indication President Biden is unpopular? As I come week after week, it is now 26 Democrats have announced they will be retiring.
Oh my God, he's so boring. I mean, I don't disagree, agree, whatever. I don't care. He's boring, right? I mean, congratulations, dude. No wonder they had to push so hard to get him in. He thought he had it for sure, and they had to kind of stomach him as a speaker, even though the ones up top wanted him. Kevin McCarthy, guys. Let's move on. Russell's today. I woke up crazy early and had this live streaming for a while I was trying to collect myself. and completely peaceful, massively thick through the streets. And this was like 3:45, 4 a.m. our time, so maybe 9 a.m., 10 a.m. Russell's, until noon, one in the afternoon for those guys. And it was all peaceful, really nice looking. And that was all the live streams I was watching. And of course, every time. I was so proud this morning. I think the biggest point is the Europeans don't mess around, man. They actually protest. It's winter there too, guys. Sure, it's not hot out. Shooting them with water cannons. All day, that was a peaceful protest. I don't know how long that happened. That was Forbes. Water cannons on your own citizen. Oh, you see the angles back there. There was a massive amount of people way back on the park. First of all, I stand with protesters always. You always have the right to protest something. If you have that kind of numbers, then maybe they should be backing off. A lot of people. A massive amount of people. That kicked off like 22 hours ago. And yeah, I'm sure everybody's heard about it already, but that's what when I was watching this morning, for, like I said, it was on the background, the side angle of my life, and absolutely all peaceful, tons and tons of people marching peacefully all day. And you always got to see those scenes where they're water cannons and tear gassing their own people, which tear gas is a war crime if you do it to another nation, but you can do it to your own people if you're a Western civilization cop. So that's the only way you get to use that on people, is if you do it against your own people. And that's all I have for the day. I'm done with that. Good for you guys. Protest away. I don't hear your issues at the moment. I'm not even going to ask. If that many people get together and feel like there's something to be said against the unjust government at the moment, then they have the right to protest, and they shouldn't have water cannons shot upon them. There's better ways to deal with it.